Okay, so welcome to part 2 on this video of Operation Tonga. And what we're going to do now is fly over to I'm going to move over this first of all to a place called Lechlade. Now we need to find RAF Fairford, which I believe is here. So we're going to set that as a departure, and then we're going to fly pretty much south to not Brigmarston Northern, not that one, this one, Boscombe Down. We'll go to Boscombe Down, but we're gonna go via Lechlade, and we will also go via this place here and this place here, which is Bulford. Okay, let's start that flight. So Monty's come along and he's told everybody what he wants us to do. We're now on to the 6th Airborne Division, and we're talking about a guy called Windy Gale. Now let me find Windy. This is Windy. Now, Windy Gale is commander of the 6th Airborne Division, and if I can remember, he is a bit of a he's a bit of a legend. He served in both wars, and so he became the first parachute brigade of the 6th Airborne Division commander. And what I'm trying to say is that he basically organizes a series of exercises in February-March of 1944, and he wants to basically test his the mettle of his troops and to allocate units to different missions. And what we're going to be concentrating on in this series of talks is the capture of the bridges at Benouville and Ranville, and these are known as the Canal Bridge and the River Orme Bridge, which are now known as Pegasus Bridge and Horsa Bridge. Let's get up in the air and let's go and have a look at this place. I think I've got everything. Full power. Airspeed is live. Looking for about 50. There we go. Pull up. flaps up. Just see if this will work now. We will need a heading. Let's capture the GPS. That's good.
Uniform Oscar 2717. Continue for west departure.
Fairford Tower, FLP Zulu Uniform Oscar 2717. Continue for west departure.
Let's make there we go. So this is RAF Fairford, but what we're looking at here is the location of what's known as Operation Biz. Operation Biz was occurred in February and March 1944. And it was used by Windy to basically assess his troops. And what we have at Lechlade is a series, as you can see here, of bridges across. This is the River Thames, by the way, this river here, and this is Lechlade. So we've got two bridges, and what we do notice is the distance between these two bridges are pretty similar to the distances between the Cairn Canal Bridge on the left there and say the River Orme Bridge here. Now, I believe that this is where they practiced their mission, and this is when we first talk about Major John Howard and D Company of the 2nd Battalion of the Ox and Bucks Light Infantry. And they were tasked to take these bridges in this exercise of Operation Biz. It may possibly be that they might. I'm not sure about these lakes and whether they were there in 1944, but it is possible that they might have used some of these narrow strips if it was here at that time. I'm gonna have to get rid of that ATC.
FLP Zulu Uniform Oscar 2717. Radar contact 4 miles north of Echo Golf Uniform Golf, 1800. QNH 101 tree.
Come on.
Roger. FLP Zulu Uniform Oscar 2717.
Just go to. There we go. Let's just keep it quiet. One thing I don't understand why that is always on. I can't turn it off. So this is Lechlade. So as I say, Lechlade. This is Operation Biz. And we can talk about John Howard. Let's find him, this guy here. But John Howard is a very interesting character. He was born in Camden in London. And if I can find... So he's... He was born in Camden in London. He was the eldest of 9 children, I believe, and he was born in 1912. He went to work in the City of London as a clerk early on, and then a few years later, the company that he was working for went bust in the consequences of the Great Depression. He moved then to Shrewsbury in 1932, and he joined up with the King's Shropshire Light Infantry, where he served for, I believe, around about 7-8 years, and was promoted, I think, to corporal in that time. Nothing super impressive. He left but he had definitely got ambitions in the army. He applied to be an officer, but was rejected at the time. He left in 1938, and he moved on. He moved down to Oxford, and he joined the police in 1938. So 1939, then he is recalled back to his unit. He rejoins the King's Shropshire Light Infantry as a corporal, but he's really rapidly promoted. This is when the whole army is obviously expanding, and he's promoted to company sergeant major within about 5 months, and then he becomes a regimental sergeant major. At this point, he's in around 1940. He's obviously proven his worth. He's offered a commission, which he takes on, and the rule in the British Army is that a sergeant major doesn't serve as an officer in his regiment, for obvious reasons, because they're usually too close to the troops. So he's moved then as a second lieutenant to the the 2nd Battalion of the Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire Light Infantry. He again is rapidly promoted within that organisation. He takes over a company and proves his mettle very quickly, and he then part of the Oxford and Bucks, the 2nd Battalion, becomes part of the Airborne. This is when it comes under Windy Gale's charge, and he actually accepts a demotion to a 2nd Lieutenant again, and he's put in charge of a platoon. But he he gets promoted and then eventually takes command of D Company of the 2nd Battalion. So you can really tell from just those stories, you know, he's the eldest of 9, he's worked as a clerk, he's been a police officer, he's been a corporal, he's been a sergeant, he's obviously excelled at whatever he's done. And you can tell the kind of guy, he's a stickler, he likes things done right, you know, he's, you know, that clerk kind of police officer vibe about him. And he obviously gets he's moved around different companies, different platoons, bringing them all into shape. He's driven. I believe he says is in his diary that the other officers look down on him. You know, they're all kind of blue-blooded commissioned officers, and at this time of the war, you know, being promoted up through the ranks, you know, you're not one of ours, you know. So he always feels that he's got to prove himself for it. He so when Operation Pegasus happened, you've got this was a major operation. Let me just talk about Operation Biz. It was originally an exercise campaign that actually had elements of the US in it. But what happened was in this operation, he was originally tasked with capturing 3 bridges, but it's then scaled down to 2. So part of the planning for Operation Tonga was that they needed to capture these 2 bridges, and they knew probably that the bridges were rigged to be blown up. And anybody in military, with any military knowledge, would know that if you lost this bridge or were threatened to lose these bridges, you would immediately blow them up. So dropping paratroopers around the area isn't quick enough. If you could see paratroopers dropping around you and knew that the bridges were threatened, it gives you time to blow them up. So they knew Major General Gale decided that these had to be captured in a coup de main operation. He turns to Brigadier Hugh Kindersley, of the Oxford Bucks, and he turns around and says that he recommends Howard's D Company to do this job. So we are heading south right now. Let's see how we're getting on. We're pretty near. We're heading south. We're coming up on the Salisbury Plain, and what happens is that Kindersley tells Howard that, okay, this is going to be D Company's job, and it is known at the time by people in the Ox and Bucks that this is known as a VC mission. Now, you can read between the lines, a guy who's newly promoted up through the ranks, given one of the most important, you could say, missions on D-Day, but it's also probably deemed as one of the ones that things could probably go pretty badly pretty quickly. Now we are coming up on a place now. Called Brigmarston Farm. Now, in shortly after Operation Biz, Howard is informed of his mission. And he is given a security clearance, which is a top secret security clearance, where basically he can see the plans for D-Day. To be given a clearance for this, it's known as BIGOT. So if you have this clearance, then you're known as bigoted. And what we are looking at here is this farmhouse. This is basically the 6th Airborne Division's D-Day planning house. To enter this building, you had to have the bigot clearance, and you were known as bigoted. And I believe it's this place here. This is Salisbury Plain. The village here is Durrington, and this is where Howard came to plan. This was known by the troops as the Madhouse. It was codenamed Broadmoor. Now, I don't know whether it was codenamed Broadmoor because it was known as the Madhouse, or it was known as the Madhouse because it was codenamed Broadmoor, but it's not to be confused, I believe, with the psychiatric hospital Broadmoor, which is in Berkshire. We're in Wiltshire here. This is where all the information, reconnaissance photographs, resistance information is poured into this place. And Howard would come here, he'd see his mission, and he'd see the maps, photographs, information. They had a sand table built. It was believed that if there was a broken window in any building around his mission area, then the model would reflect that within 24 hours. So this is Broadmoor or Brigmarston House. And if we follow this road here, we come to this collection of buildings here, which is Bulford Camp. Now this is a British Army base, still is, and this is where D Company was based. You can zoom in here, you can even see now, look at all these tank transporters, vehicles, military vehicles. So this is Howard would make this trip across to Broadmoor to check his plans. Quite an interesting place. This is basically this is the British Army training area. You can see down here there is a number of firing ranges. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 firing ranges. Yeah, so you can also see over here, this is chalk downs. So these are tank and training areas on Salisbury Plain. I think this place is Tidsworth, I think. Anyway, you can see here, look at all the tank training areas, crisscrossing the land. So this is where they would train, and they did train for D-Day. Somewhere in this area, I know he would have the bridges taped out, so they would all know the sort of dimensions, and anything that was on the table would be taped out on the ground, and they would practice using that. I believe possibly the New Zealanders may have been here. Okay, so this is Bulford Camp. Now let's land. I think we should be somewhere over here. There we go. This looks like Boscombe Down. Slow this up. Yeah, we want to be. Let's land on the east-west runway. We'll put some flaps down. Again, we're way too high. But this is Boscombe Down. This is going to be a very long runway. There we go. So let's call this the end of part 2. There we go. So we'll call that the end of part 2, and I'll see you in part 1. 3.